Hi there, heroes! For today's adventure, I'll be taking you on a journey to the world of civic engagement. For you see, you don't always need to join a team to be a hero. While the presidential election dominates the news cycle every 4 years, there are countless other ways that you can engage with your government. But the easiest place to start is with voting. Obviously, there's the presidential election every 4 years, which includes a ton of down-ballot races like the U.S. Senate, the House of Representatives, the State Senate, the State Assembly, and various other local and state races. We also have the midterms every 2 years, which includes most of what I just listed, and off-year elections that are almost exclusively for local and state positions. And I get that it can be a lot to keep track of, especially since different positions have different term lengths, with the president being 4 years, most legislative positions being 2 years, and the U.S. Senate being 6 years, with only a third of all Senate seats being up for grab during any given 2-year cycle, plus the governorships and other local, county, and state positions varying wildly from state to state and district to district. But if you're watching this video, then you're going to be okay. Because you have the internet. Just search for your local Board of Elections website, and you can have quick and easy access to a sample ballot for your district, showing you everyone who's currently running and for what position. It also includes information on the dates for the local and primary elections. Because yes, there are other elections outside of Election Day, and they matter too. Mayor, town council, school board, the dates for these kinds of races can vary wildly according to where you live. And that's not even getting into special elections that pop up whenever a position suddenly opens outside of the traditional election cycle. And in addition to all that, we have the primaries. These are the races where you get to choose who will actually be on the final ballot. And this is one of the few cases where your party affiliation can actually matter, depending on if your state has open primaries or not. In a closed primary, only members of a given party can vote to determine that party's nominee. So if you live in a state with closed primaries, I heavily recommend that you register with whichever political party you most want to have a voice in. Oh, and this should probably go without saying, but please make sure that you're registered to vote. We'll talk about non-voting things later, but obviously nothing in this section of the video matters if you can't vote. Go to vote.org. There you can check your registration, register if you're not already in the system, or make sure that you have active status and that all your information is up to date if you are already in the system. You can also look up your polling place and even request reminders for upcoming election dates. Even if you don't plan on voting, register anyway. It's better to have the option than not. And remember, if you do register with a party to vote in its primaries, you ultimately don't have to vote for them in the general election if you change your mind later. I've known registered Republicans who consistently vote for Democrats in the general election, but still keep their party affiliation to try and push for GOP primary candidates that better reflect their values. And vice versa. All these registrations mean is that you have a foot in the door to have a voice if you decide you want it. But let's say you are fully registered. You know when the election is, and you know exactly what will be on the ballot. How do you decide who to vote for? I mean, I know I've got strong political opinions, obviously, or I wouldn't be making this video, but I also know that not everyone is as plugged in as I am, or else, again, I wouldn't be making this video. But even I don't have opinions on every race. I don't know who I want to win the comptroller primary, if that's a thing. I should probably look up if that's a thing. We live in extremely polarizing times. News stations and candidates are frequently accusing one another of lying, and that can make you feel like you're facing that challenge in Labyrinth, where there are 2 doors and 2 guards, and one always tells the truth and the other always lies, and you need to come up with a clever riddle to figure it out, but part of you kind of realizes that the whole thing could be a setup, and they might both be lying, and you just end up falling down a dark hole full of weird grabbing hands. And I think I'm starting to lose the metaphor here. But the point is that it's okay to not have all the answers. Vetting every single claim is an exhausting process that most people aren't really fully equipped to do. It takes time and research. And I'm not just talking about going down internet rabbit holes, but actually understanding things like independent verification, primary sources, and critical analysis. I mean, I've got 3 degrees that have called for me to learn about statistical analysis, communications theory, and cognitive development, but that is not a reasonable expectation to have for the vast majority of people. And even I can't be an expert on everything. I don't have a political science degree. My father does, but let's face it, how many kids out there really remember to listen to their parents? Did you call your mother for Mother's Day? And where was I? Right, deciding who to vote for. I recommend starting with Ballotpedia. It's a great resource with a ton of electoral information. They even have a sample ballot lookup tool where you can click on the candidates in each race and see individual wiki-style pages on all of them. You can see their stances on major issues, their history of service, and any personal campaign pages that may be available. And in many cases, a brief nonpartisan overview of the candidates is all you really need. You don't need to follow every single news story to be an informed voter, especially from media pundits who tend to have their own personal biases. Note that this isn't a dig at pundits in general. Simply a recognition that their job is to interpret current events from a specific political perspective and essentially advocate for that political perspective. Opinions can be well formed and well argued, or they might not be. And making that assessment can take a lot of work. If you don't have the tools or time to make that assessment, then simply feel free to view them as entertainment, and you can dig into further details on individual stories at your own discretion. For making voting decisions, I recommend looking into platforms and policies that the candidates themselves put forward. Even if you don't think they'll follow through, simply knowing what they think you want to hear can tell you a lot about what they're going to prioritize. If they put forward things that sound good to you, be skeptical. If they put forward things that sound bad to you, that should be a huge red flag, because them thinking that those things sound good is a clear signal that their values do not align with yours. Human rights violations in particular should never be shrugged off as empty campaign promises or inflammatory rhetoric. If the candidate has previously held elected office, check over their past records. See if the things that they take credit for are actually measures that they've had a hand in. It's wild how often politicians will take credit for legislation that they actively voted against or tried to overturn. These are things that can help you determine if the candidate can actually be trusted. You should also do a cursory check for scandals, ethics violations, and criminal histories. And watch out for false equivalencies. Just because both candidates have skeletons in their closet doesn't mean that they are equally bad. There's a big difference between a campaign finance violation due to a clerical error and a recurring pattern of criminal behavior. And also remember that politicians tend to be very powerful people and are unlikely to be charged with a crime unless there is a very strong case against them. So if they have a bunch of cases against them that have ultimately been dropped, that's still a red flag. Rumors, on the other hand, can be taken with a grain of salt. Okay, so you've checked the Board of Elections website for the election dates, registered to vote through vote.org, and checked the candidates' policy positions and histories through ballotpedia.org. At this point, if you're still up in the air about which individual to vote for, you can just vote based on their party. Seriously, if it's a general election, you can pretty reliably just vote the party line. The vast majority of the time, that's how the politicians are going to end up voting anyway, regardless of whatever other promises they may end up making. So if you don't have time to look up all the other details that I've just mentioned, their party affiliation is generally going to be the strongest predictor of what they'll support and advocate for once in office. When it comes to choosing a political party, focus on actions, not words. What major partisan legislation have they voted for? And what have they voted against? Everybody's going to say they support freedom. Everyone's going to say they support immigration reform. Everyone's going to say they support the military. So look at what things set the parties apart. When it comes to third parties, do your best to avoid splitting the vote in places where someone can win with less than 50%. If your favorite party doesn't have a clear path to victory, but your least favorite party definitely does, vote for the party that has a better chance against them to ensure the best outcome that's reasonably available. On the other hand, some districts may have a deeply entrenched incumbent party that's almost certain to win, and some states engage in electoral fusion to allow candidates to run on multiple party lines. These are both cases where voting for the third party line can send a clear message to the major parties about the popularity of certain platforms. Now, if you know your party and you know who you're voting for and you have the time, advocate for them. Search for opportunities to engage in phone banking, text banking, door-to-door canvassing, writing postcards, writing letters, or whatever you think best fits your skill set and availability. Most candidate websites will have some kind of volunteer or take action link that you can click on. But what if you still don't feel strongly about who you're voting for? Honestly, that's fine. You don't need to. You don't need to fall in love with this person. You don't even need to think that they're the best person for the job. A vote is a tactical move, not an endorsement or declaration of fealty. If anything, you're selecting the people who are going to have to answer to you. And that's where we get into the next section of this video. Once someone is elected to an office, that office has a phone number, an address, and an email, and you are fully entitled as a constituent to reach out to them. Call, write, message them to let them know if you approve or disapprove of a new bill or resolution. Tell them about the things that you want to see them fighting, or check in to see what they're doing to fulfill the promises that they made to you. Much like with elections, there are campaigns out there with form letters or scripts to follow if you're struggling to find the words for what you want. Name an issue, and there's probably an advocacy group that you can find online. Personally, I've got my senators and my congressmen saved in my phone's contacts, so that way I don't need to worry about looking them up whenever there's an issue I wish to call them about. But you can also just use the U.S. Capitol switchboard number at 202-224-3121 to connect to your representatives. But let's say you want some more direct FaceTime. That's where town halls come in. Town hall meetings are where constituents can all collect to hear directly from their elected representatives and ask questions to hold them to account. I recently attended 2 from my congressman, Paul Tonko. Each town hall opened with a brief speech, followed by a few vetted questions that were submitted online and presented by a moderator. The floor was then opened up to questions from the audience, as people were called up to the microphone via raffle ticket. At the end of the evening, the congressman stuck around for a bit to shake hands and address some one-on-one conversations with lingering constituents. Now, I can't say that every town hall is structured like this, but it was like this for both of the ones that I attended, as well as the previous one that I checked out online. Because that's right, many of these meetings are streamed live and recorded in case people can't make it or the room hits max capacity. In both cases, the high school auditorium venues were completely sold out, filling nearly 1,000 seats. Now, I say sold out, but the tickets were free. You just had to make sure to register online in advance. Which is why you should follow your elected representatives on social media to make sure that you don't miss out when events like this are being publicized. Oh, hey, that's me. This is also where they post their stances on major issues and advertise other types of events where they may be in attendance. But it's not just these big congressional town hall meetings that you should be looking into. Believe it or not, even small town council meetings may be recorded and published online, alongside their meeting minutes and agendas. And these kinds of meetings are much smaller. I finally went to a local one the other week, and there were literally 10 people in the audience, including myself. They were going through and approving some recent hiring proposals for the town, and one of the people in the audience was a new member of the planning department who was there with her family providing support. So after that hiring approval portion ended, there were only 5 people left remaining, including the head of the planning department that had just advocated for her. So if you're worried that you might not get your voice heard at one of these big town hall meetings, try one of these. These public forums give constituents the opportunity to express whatever concerns they may have, whether they're worried over local traffic safety or scared over the loss of fundamental rights. Plus, it's a chance to actually see your elected officials in action so you can better determine if you like the job they're doing, or if you think that someone else out there might be able to do it better. But it's not just about the back and forth between you and your elected representatives. It's also about connecting with your fellow community members. In a crowd of 1,000 people, you might not be able to directly get in touch with your congressman, but you can talk to the person sitting next to you. Find out why they're there. Find out what they care about. A number of them are likely to be part of other groups that you may want to join or support, but wouldn't otherwise have heard about. As I was leaving those big town hall meetings, I overheard a bunch of little groups of people talking about which organizations they were involved with and what next steps they were intending to take to address the issues that came up during the meeting. When people say that voting is just an entry point and that politics isn't a spectator sport, this is what they mean. You start by figuring out what it is that you care about, and then you get to work actually doing something about it. But it's also not just about those issues. Because do you know what else I learned about in that little town council meeting? I learned about park cleanup days. I learned about the upcoming parade, events that I could potentially bring my family to that I might not otherwise have been aware of. We don't just live in deeply polarizing times, but deeply isolating times. We have the internet to connect us to people from around the world, but we often don't even know the names of our next door neighbors. And while our internet friends are absolutely awesome and can open you up to a whole host of different experiences, they're not typically going to be the ones who can provide you with physical help when you need it. Maybe you need a hand moving a couch, or you'd like to borrow a drill, or you need someone to watch your kids, or maybe you're in danger. The world can potentially be a very scary place if you don't know if you can trust the people around you. Incredible things can happen when people get together. So make a habit of going down to those town council meetings. They may be a bit dry, but they're super local, they happen once or twice a month, and they can be as short as only 10 minutes long. I know, we're all super busy, but think about all the different ways your life could be improved by getting to know your community. Which is going to take more time? Packing up your kids into the car to bring them down to your in-laws' house, or asking Sally next door to keep an eye on them? Which is going to be more expensive, going down to the hardware store to buy a jigsaw, or borrowing the one from Jeff around the block? And when your landlord wants to raise your rent, who do you think is more likely to change his mind? You on your own, or everyone around the building who all got to know each other at the summer block party? And speaking of summer, we are rapidly approaching the season of outdoor events. Memorial Day parades, Pride Month marches, 4th of July celebrations, poolside barbecues. Go! Enjoy them! Have fun! And then bring some of that same energy to your civic engagement. Every month in this country, we have protests and marches and rallies. And while elected representatives may often ignore these mass outcries for change, simply being in the presence of so many people who share your common values provides tremendous opportunity for connections and community, so that when you go home, you know you're not alone. You have other people that you can rely on as you work together for a better future. I said at the start of this video that you don't need to join a team to be a hero, and that's kind of true. Because when you get right down to it, you're already part of one. You're already part of a community. You just need to learn how to embrace it and how to engage with it. And when you do, you'll know what issues matter to you and who is fighting for them and how you can help and who can help you when you need it. When you see voting as your only civic duty, then all this pressure and fear and uncertainty builds up because you don't know any of these people. You don't know any of these issues. You're just one person, and you've spent the last 4 years trying desperately not to think about any of this and just live your own life. But when you engage with your community, then you know what's going on because you're there. You don't need the breaking news stories to tell you the impact because you're seeing the impact. You don't need to look up who your representative is because you've seen them in person and you know where they stand because you've called them over and over and over again. You make civic engagement a regular part of your life. Spend 5 minutes each week on the phone. Spend 15 minutes every 2 weeks at a town council meeting. Take an evening or an afternoon each month to attend a town hall or a rally or a protest, and then meet up with your friend Dave for lunch and chat about it afterwards. You'll be amazed at what opportunities present themselves. I went to a teacher union rally about retirement benefits, and there I met a local state assemblyman, and now I'm doing research for him on a potentially possible universal pension program for the state of New York, which is one of the reasons I've been so busy lately. And he's not even my assemblyman. Voting is incredibly important, and it's great that we have access to online resources like Vote.org, Board of Elections websites, Ballotpedia.org, campaign and organization websites, and video recordings of what our elected officials are doing. But much of the real work of civic engagement, of being a superhero to your community, only begins after you take your first step out the door. So there you have it. If you would like to learn more about civic engagement, you can check out any of the resources listed in this video, with links in the description below. And if you sign up for our Patreon, all proceeds for the month of May 2025 will go directly to Spread the Vote, an organization dedicated to providing some of our most vulnerable citizens with the IDs that they need to vote, secure housing, and so much more. Remember, the world can be a scary place. And that's why we need heroes. So until we meet again, let's all be superheroes. And I'll see you in the next adventure.